Government lawyers are fleeing the Trump administration in droves, and we're not talking about a handful of disgruntled attorneys who are quietly updating their LinkedIn profiles. We're talking about more than 10,000 lawyers gone since January 2025.
It's a stampede!
Let me just repeat that number, 10,000 lawyers. That is roughly 1 in 5 government attorneys who were on the job at the end of 2024, gone by March of this year. And here's the kicker. They're not disappearing into thin air. They're showing up at nonprofits, state attorney general offices, and law clinics that are actively fighting the Trump regime in court. So Trump's crackdown is not just losing lawyers, it's funding the opposition's legal army. That's not a strategy. That's Trump and MAGA scoring a goal on themselves.
That's embarrassing.
This is Phil Weiser, Colorado's Attorney General. He has hired 22 lawyers from across the federal government in the last year alone. Weiser said that's translating directly to people saying, I want to be part of organizations that actively operate with integrity, that people want to be a part of, that people feel good about doing the right thing. And Weiser isn't the only one. Democratic state AGs across the country are snapping up seasoned federal attorneys who know exactly how the government works because they used to work in it. These are the same lawyers who will be walking into federal courtrooms to challenge Trump's policies. You could not write a more ironic outcome if you tried. Now, according to Trump, he says it's a good thing. On his Twitter knockoff, Truth Social, he wrote, "The people that are leaving are radical left deep state lunatics who are destroying our country and weaponizing government." Many of them didn't leave, but were fired. Now, many of the lawyers who departed the administration in 2025 either retired, left as a result of staffing cuts, or resigned in opposition to Trump's policies. He goes on to say, the failing New York Times writes this, but makes it sound like it's a terrible thing when actually it's just the opposite. Yeah, you definitely don't sound pissed off at all there, Donnie. We want people that will make America great again, not people that are trying to destroy our country, that were put in by Obama and Biden, and in many cases, they shouldn't have been representing the USA in the first place. Basically, he just wants loyal servants to push his agenda in the courts, except this mass exodus is a huge problem for him. What Trump doesn't seem to understand with his dementia-addled brain is that the loss of lawyers working for the administration means that there are fewer to defend his policies in court, so that backfired. It's just another moment of MAGA trying to own the libs, except it blows up in their faces.
Awkward.
The Justice Department, which employs more than a quarter of all government lawyers, took the biggest hit in raw numbers. Its attorney ranks shrank by a fifth. And to deal with that, the DOJ relaxed its hiring requirements for some positions. They're now considering hiring federal prosecutors straight out of law school, which is honestly pretty on brand for this administration. Remember Trump loyalist Lindsay Halligan, his former personal attorney who never tried a case in her life and was appointed as a U.S. acting attorney? She was so dumb and inexperienced that a judge threw out both of Trump's retribution cases against James Comey and Letitia James. The U.S. attorney pretender then left office from sheer embarrassment. Their hiring choices are not exactly inspiring confidence. Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, actually posted a recruiting ad on social media declaring that they were fast-tracking applications. It's actually pretty sad. Just see for yourself.
Hi.
Wait, hold on. Did she just snap her fingers and do finger guns? She opened that video like she was auditioning to be part of the Jets and West Side Story.
You may have heard that we're hiring here at the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, but did you know that a significant portion of the work that we do here is criminal prosecutions of major federal statutes? We handle hate crime prosecutions here, destruction of religious property, attacks on houses of worship of all faiths, and other criminal matters, including conspiracies to violate your civil rights.
If you think this is boring, just imagine working for her. Oh, and when she talks about protecting civil liberties, she means only for white people because, as we all know, this is MAGA. But also because Trump is a huge racist who pardoned over 1,500 violent January 6 rioters and then created a $1.8 billion slush fund for them because they're the real victims here.
Right.
That slush fund was actually Plan B. Trump wanted that money to go directly into his pocket, and his lawyers thought that was going too far. You think? So now he's freaking out over the fund being put on pause and the case being reopened to examine whether the deal was based on deception. This whole fund is just f***ing unusual.
It is true that this is unusual.
That is true. But it is not unprecedented, and it was done to address something that had never happened again either. So there is an unprecedented nature of what we did yesterday in response to years and years of weaponization.
You know who else had a slush fund? You guessed it, the Nazis. So interpret that as you will. It's just one more thing that has caused a ton of internal chaos for the DOJ and Trump's personal attorney turned acting AG, Todd Blanche.
Ted Cruz himself, he was on his podcast last week. He said Todd Blanche was at a meeting with Senate Republicans. Of about the 45 who were in there, at least 20 were pissed. He said it was one of the most fiery meetings that he's seen.
Right.
You bring up the good point about germaneness, and I spoke to another Senate GOP aide who said that because a Judiciary Committee is involved in this, anything related to the weaponization fund would likely be germane, meaning it would only need 50 votes to get over the finish line,
Right.
Meaning that if you have a couple Republican defectors joining all 47 Democrats, you can actually block this thing. And that is the crux of the problem here, because, again, I was talking to one of these aides, and they said we can come up with some sort of amendment that's a compromise amendment among Republicans. Maybe it doesn't block the fund altogether, but it says January 6 rioters can't get money from it. It says Congress will have a little bit more say in who's on the commission overseeing this fund. That's all fine and dandy, but then what is going to stop some of these YOLO Republicans, some of these more moderate Republicans from going and supporting a stronger Democratic amendment that says you need to block this thing? If enough of them do it, that could be the entire ballgame. That is this sort of balancing act right now the Republicans are dealing with, that they can do something that their conference agrees with, but what's stopping those few Republicans from supporting a Democratic amendment as well?
And now there's been so much pushback that Trump has abandoned the slush fund.
We know that the department has agreed to pause this effort until at least June 12th. I wanted to ask what your plans were for the fund after June 12th.
So thank you. So look, we're not moving forward with the fund. You're right that there's a date that in the case in the Eastern District of Virginia in June, but we are not moving forward with the fund, period. The reasons for the fund is something that President Trump talked about for a long time, which is the fact that there were a lot of people in this country who had their government weaponized against them. The reasons for the fund, I think, it remain as important as they were before, but we are not moving forward with the fund.
Not moving forward ever.
Correct.
Maybe it's just me, but something tells me it could come back from the dead.
I want to thank you for verbally committing to not moving forward with the so-called anti-weaponization fund. I just want to make sure, are you going to issue a new memo in writing, rescinding that May 18th memo?
I'm not committing to putting anything in writing. I'm going to say it today
Nothing in
over and
writing.
over again. I mean, I don't know what the purpose of putting something in writing. I'm telling you what we're doing. Meaning, like, why do I need to put something in writing if I'm telling you what we're doing?
Well, you started it, you established it in writing, so it just makes sense to rescind it in writing. I think a lot of Americans, both sides of the aisle, are concerned about it, and it would restore a lot of trust about this issue.
Okay, I'm not committing to doing anything in writing.
Not committing.
No.
And there it is. Comments like that from Blanche are exactly why nobody from that administration should be trusted at their word. Because here's the pattern. Trump, Blanche, and their DOJ lawyers have been walking into courtrooms and congressional hearings and saying whatever they need to keep the next vanity project for Trump alive. Blanche won't put it in writing because Trump wants to keep that option open. And with so many departures from the DOJ, they're now actively recruiting from the MAGA cesspool known as Twitter. Nope, I am not kidding. Chad Mizell from the DOJ posted this on Twitter. If you are a lawyer, are interested in being an AUSA, and support President Trump and anti-crime agenda, DM me. First off, this whole administration is riddled with crime. I mean, I just discussed one a moment ago. And second, DM me. What kind of circus are we running here? Actually, I guess it's less like a circus and more like a county fairgrounds, as you can clearly see on the south lawn of the White House as we prepare for the country's 250th birthday. But anyway, back to the hiring. No qualifications? No problem. Join the regime, loyalty required, just make sure to slide into my DMs. He goes on to say, we need good prosecutors. Yeah, good luck with that one. And DOJ is hiring across the country. Now is your chance to join the mission and do good for our country. That's the legal equivalent of a restaurant putting up a handwritten sign that says, now hiring, no experience necessary, after the entire kitchen staff walked out. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just experienced lawyers who are heading for the exits. Law students, the people who would normally be lining up for federal clerkships and DOJ internships, are pumping the brakes too. Scott Burke, a first-year student at Georgetown Law, turned down a DOJ internship this summer. He said, "A lot of people I've spoken to just in the last few months have said that they would look down on a person if they had a federal job on their resume that they started during this administration. And some people have explicitly said they would see a person willing to go to work at this DOJ as somebody they couldn't trust." This is a Georgetown Law student talking about the DOJ. I mean, just let that land for a sec. And Matthew DeRay, a self-described conservative Republican in his first year at Antonin Scalia Law School, is asking the same question out loud. Is it worth getting a job, and will that help career-wise, having 1 year of Trump administration experience on your resume, or will that hurt? Yeah, the answer is it will hurt. It will hurt a lot, and any young lawyer who makes the decision to join will be cast out like a fool and will never be taken seriously. We have a whole exhibit hall of cautionary tales of lawyers who tied themselves to Donald Trump and walked away professionally destroyed. Again, look at Lindsay Halligan or Alina Habba, who went from being one of Trump's top lawyers to becoming a punchline in every federal courtroom that she stepped into. She is now a White House counselor, which is either a promotion or a reassignment depending on how you look at it. Either way, her legal reputation is cooked. And then there's Rudy Giuliani, who was permanently disbarred in both New York and DC because he filed lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit trying to overturn the 2020 election with zero evidence in courtroom after courtroom, losing every single time. The guy lost 60 cases and he humiliated himself and went broke in the process, all for Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, Giuliani was recently on the brink of death, but then he recovered, which means somewhere out there, there's still a Horcrux. We just haven't found it yet. The point is, lawyers who bet their careers on Trump did not come out the other side with better resumes. They came out disbarred, embarrassed, or answering questions in front of grand juries. Anyway, some agencies did not just lose lawyers, they gutted them. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency literally created to protect regular people from predatory lenders, lost more than 50% of its legal staff. And as of March, it had fewer than 200 lawyers and had just 2 open positions posted on its website. 2 positions for an entire federal consumer protection agency.
Yikes.
Peterson, a former CFPB lawyer, said that for lawyers committed to a particular enforcement mission, the federal government may not be the right place right now, or ever under Republican leadership for that matter. Peterson left to work at an advocacy group called Protect Borrowers, an organization that challenges the very policies that CFPB is no longer enforcing. Again, the legal talent didn't disappear, it just switched teams. Remember that $1.8 billion slush fund that I mentioned earlier? Well, Brian Morrissey was the general counsel of the entire Treasury Department, but he resigned earlier this month, hours after the government announced it was creating that fund for Trump's goons. Brandon Jones-Cobb spent years as an EPA Clean Air Act lawyer building enforcement cases. When Trump 2.0 hit, all of those cases, years of work, were put on permanent pause. He left in the summer of 2025 to work for the Center for Biological Diversity, and earlier this month, he sued the EPA for not enforcing air pollution controls. He is now suing the agency that he used to work for. Andrew Mergen, who spent more than 30 years at the Justice Department and now runs Harvard Law's Environmental Law Clinic, says that he recognizes 2/3 of the people on his nonprofit video calls because they were all his former DOJ colleagues. He called it a remarkable shift in talent out of the federal government to other places. I would personally call it the federal government accidentally building the most experienced opposition legal team in American history.
What an idiot!
Now, to be fair, one agency did grow its legal ranks. The Department of Homeland Security increased its attorneys by 21% because, as we know, DHS is driving the immigration crackdown, and immigration enforcement needs lawyers. Or maybe more like lawyers to help defend the inhumane practices that the Trump administration is implementing. You know, like murdering American citizens in the streets. The pattern is clear. Lawyers are being hired where the administration wants to use them as a weapon, and they're leaving, well, everywhere else. The Education Department lost more than 50% of its lawyers, HUD lost 40%, the EPA lost about 25%, and now the Education Department is telling Congress it needs more attorneys to handle a backlog of discrimination cases. Linda McMahon, who has no experience in education whatsoever, said that to Congress herself.
You're saying you were trying to figure out how to better resolve cases. You resolved not a single case in Connecticut in 2025. I mean, how do you defend that? Not a single child in Connecticut got a positive resolution from the Department of Education for their discrimination claims. 70 of them had disability claims. How do you defend that?
Well, it is very difficult when I'm trying to address those particular issues, except to know that those things were happening. And we are looking forward to make sure that they stop happening.
But you fired half the department.
But that is hindsight. What we are doing now
What does that mean?
Is that you know perfectly well what it is. We've brought people on board to handle these cases because I believe that they should be handled. We should be dismissing these cases. We should be finding resolutions to them. And so those attorneys are being brought back. They were
How many of them have been brought back?
All of the ones that were fired who didn't take early retirement, they came back, and we are, in this budget, have more money to hire more lawyers.
No, this budget proposes a 35% reduction to the Office of Civil Rights, and so that's my final question.
No, but it is a budget of increasing dollars for civil rights, and we are hiring more lawyers.
No, it's not. This office, this budget has a 35% proposed reduction for the Office of Civil Rights.
Well, we are moving forward to make sure that
that's
rapid
true,
resolution, expanded mediation, multi-regional teams.
Well, but let's just agree to the facts, right? You will agree that this budget you're proposing to reduce funding for the department by 35%.
No, I'm not agreeing to that.
What?
So in typical MAGA fashion, they fired people, created a backlog, and now they need to hire more people to fill the gaps that they created. This is a complete circle and a huge waste of money coming from the administration that claims to be cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. So to fix this massive problem that they created, the Office of Personnel Management launched a legal talent recruiting network to connect potential hires with federal agencies. Want to guess how that's going? 300 people. That is the total interest it has drawn so far. 300 people for a federal government that just lost more than 10,000 lawyers. Phil Weiser, the Colorado AG that I mentioned earlier, summed it up perfectly. The states are able to pick up some of the slack, but this is not a sustainable situation. We need a Justice Department with high-quality legal talent that operates with integrity. Here's the bottom line. The federal government employed about 37,000 civilian workers at the end of March. That is 17% fewer than it had at the end of 2024. The people doing the hiring to replace them are running social media recruiting ads and drawing 300 applicants for a hole that fits 10,000. Meanwhile, the lawyers who left are suing the EPA, winning antitrust cases that the feds abandoned mid-trial, and building the legal backbone for every state, nonprofit, and advocacy group pushing back. So remember how Trump was cheering on that they were leaving and saying it was a good thing? Well, guess what? Congratulations. You just staffed your opposition. Thanks so much for watching What Was That? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to check out my Substack at whatwasthat.show to get more episodes and breakdowns. You can also support this one-man operation by becoming a member and subscribing for just $10 a month. And if you have other ideas for stories that you'd like me to cover, make sure to contact me on any of these platforms at I am Gabe Sanchez. You can also find What Was That on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Gabe Sanchez, and I'll see you next time on What Was That?